Okay, this is going to be painting skills part 1, and what we're working with first is the color wheel project. So I strongly encourage you to print this out and try to get a good fidelity printout from that. I chose an auto, auto color on this, or a full color on this, and it kind of made my violet a little weird. It looks more like just a straight up blue. So I know I'm probably going to have good fidelity with the rest of the colors, but perhaps that one. So we're going to use this to work from as such. And although we made our canvases before on cardboard, I'm just working on a board, just some kind of a sturdy surface, and I just taped it down really, really well, because sometimes when you use a water method, like with any kind of painting, it's going to wrinkle the paper up. And we want this to look pretty nice. So we're going to be using tempera paints. This is in your syllabus in terms of things that you need to buy. You don't have to buy the big ones like this. This is just what I get in bulk. Tempera is kind of like one of the best types of paint to use with kids because it's got a longer working time. It seems to dry out fairly quickly, and it washes out of clothes really well. Color fastness, sometimes it looks a little bit chalky after it dries. I prefer acrylic most of the time, but again, working with kids, tempera is a good sort of happy medium as such. And so that's what we're going to use. You got to make sure you've got your yellow, red, and blue. Sometimes you can get a little kit, or you can get pans, and that's fine too. Also want to make sure that we've got some white and black. We're not going to use a lot of white and black. We're going to use it to manipulate the colors a little bit, but really we want the primary colors, yellow, red, and blue, to work with the most, and then we're going to do some experimentation with the white and black later. So I just went ahead and arranged my palette like this to where I've got white and black. They're very well isolated from my primary colors here. Like to leave a couple little areas in here. If you don't have a palette like this, a good substitute for a palette like this would be like just using a paper plate, or sometimes I'll just get a piece of cardboard, cut it out, and I'll just like pour these on there as such. And my yellow's kind of starting to dry out a little bit, no big deal, because I can always add water to that to make that a little bit better. So what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna try to paint this thing upside down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw out my color wheel first. And it makes more sense to me to use some kind of a template to do this. And so I'm just using the inside part of this painter's tape here. And what we want is we want kind of a triad like this, and that's going to represent our primary colors. So if I have the example next to that, we know that this one's going to be yellow. We're going to go for blue on this one out here. Let's see if I can actually make that backwards. Upside down, I don't know, maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. And then let's see, red. Well, there we go. So when we mix our yellow and red together, we're going to get an orange and such. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to draw like a little bit smaller circle that I'll clean up. Now if you had something that you could use as a template, that would be fine too. So this is going to be orange. I'm going to go ahead and make another circle here for violet. So I'm going to label that with a V. Artists typically use the term violet rather than purple, just for the sake of keeping things a little bit more simple with abbreviations. So I need another one here. So this one will be green. And so again, I don't know, we'll see if I can. I'm just going to go back this way. Green. Yeah, cool. All right, so then what we're going to have between there, so these are our secondary colors, these are our primaries. We can't make any other colors without these being in existence first. We actually want to get some tertiary colors in here too, or what I refer to them with kids is like intermediate colors, because sometimes they have a hard time understanding tertiary from intermediate. Intermediate seems to make sense. It's between primary and secondary as such, or it's rather a third combination, and so we need a circle in between each one of these as well. So you want to make sure you leave enough space on your paper that you're applying this cleanly, neatly, all that stuff. Looks like I didn't leave a lot of space here for my red-orange, but I'll make it work. Yellow-green will go there, blue-green will go here. Okay, so my next step here is to clean these things up with an eraser. And so that's really enchanting to watch and everything, but I don't want to spend a lot of time doing that. I would rather spend more time demonstrating. So I'm going to go fairly quickly with this, just to try to make it a little bit, have more craftsmanship going on. So I'll just kind of like go back around, I'll make a good solid circle. Try to keep within that. It's going to give you sort of a good practice too with like brush control. So with younger kids, I usually have them fill in shapes like this with their paintbrush. Okay, so this one's going to be yellow-orange. And so I usually abbreviate these with a capital for the primary and a lowercase for the secondary. So this one here is going to be yellow-green. Again, I don't know if that's an upside down G or not. It kind of looks like it. This one here will be blue-green. Some people call this one teal. And blue-violet, which is one of my favorite colors. I use it a lot in my work. This one's going to be red-violet. Let's see, red-orange here. And it looks like we have them all labeled. So now, it's about starting with our primaries. And so you can see that I've got like a lot of different things protecting my work surface, my desk and all that. Make sure you have some water. You'll need water to clean out your brush. And I like to use a round brush for this, just because I'm dealing with round shapes. And so typically what I'll do is select a round brush for spherical objects or circular objects. If I'm doing something flat, like I'm going to do on the next technique series, I'll go ahead and choose a flat brush as such. With this tempera, I usually paint it on really pretty thick, especially in the yellow, and yellow should be on top. So the way you're looking at this is the orientation that you should be doing this. So yellow's always on top. Artists kind of agree that it's a very bright, bold, intense color, and that's sort of the signification as to why it would be on the top. And again, really practice that brush control as such. Okay, my yellow's kind of dried out just a little bit. Sometimes you can add water to this, but I try to paint it like really really thick or opaque without that. So I'm just going to rinse off my brush, dry it off. I want to make sure I don't have a lot of water in my brush. I'm going to move on to red and blue. Whoop. Because the real trick with color wheel creation is not painting these colors on here, you know, the primaries. They're straight out of the bottle. But the challenge here is to mix the colors that you want. I almost always limit my students' color choices to primaries and white and black so that they have a constant color mixing experience. And again, you can probably see that that yellow is starting to dry. It's becoming a little bit more chalky. Now, if you have the pan watercolors, or the pan temperas rather, like, you know, similar to watercolors where you have to add water to them to activate them, you just want to make sure that you add a good deal of water to it, because you want to stir it up and get a good kind of creamy sort of consistency with the paint. And you can see with the blue, I'm going to have a lot of brush strokes on here because it's a darker color. It's laying on top of the white paper, and so it may take me a couple of coats. I really don't want brush strokes in here. Like, I want these just to read as very flat colors. Brush strokes are good when we're painting stuff and we want it to look illusionistic, but for what we're doing right now, we just want to focus on smooth, clean application. So if you've bunched it up in one area more than another, you want to just kind of like smooth it back out. So it's all the same intensity and consistency of paint. And then I'll usually come back again and I'll add more to this so that those brush strokes kind of go away. I don't see any brush strokes in here, I'm good. May have to add some to the red as well. So next step here is working with our secondaries, okay? So what I'm gonna do first is work on my orange spectrum. So you have to think about the relative strength of these primary colors. Yellow, although it's very bright, is relatively weak, like in power compared to red and blue, because it doesn't take very much red to influence yellow. It doesn't take very much blue at all to influence yellow, but it takes a lot of yellow to influence these other colors. So the best way to teach students how to mix color on their own is to start with a good amount of the weakest color and slowly apply your stronger color to that and mix it. And slowly darken it until you get the color you want. So I'm going for orange spectrum at this point. A lot of students will first use a bunch of this and then keep adding this to it, and what's going to happen is they're going to blow through a lot of paint through that process. So here's what I'm doing. I'm kind of looking at these different oranges and deciding which one it looks most like, and sometimes I'll even paint it right next to it. I'm liking that red-orange here at this point. So that means that perhaps I added a little bit too much red to it. So that means that I've got a good consistent red-orange. I'm going to go ahead and paint that in there now before that paint dries. So I always tell my students, you know, once you've mixed something, compare it and see about your tertiary intermediate colors. And then just go for it instead of trying to make a different color. Okay, so to get a different orange, a lighter orange, what I'm going to do this time is clean my brush out. I'm going to add a lot of yellow in here, and instead of taking red, I'm going to take some of this orange here. So there's already a good deal of yellow in this orange, or this red orange, and so I'm not really influencing that yellow very much because I'm kind of shooting for a yellow orange, so we'll see. Right now I feel like it's a little bit too bright. And it is important to make sure that you wash your brushes really well. Like I really rinse them out well with water, and then I always dry them off. So for my yellow orange, definitely too yellow at this point. So I'm going to add a little bit more of this orange to it. And again, not red, because red will push me too far. You'll get the hang of this after a while. It really solidifies color and color mixing for students when they have to mix these rather than selecting something out of a bottle. Sometimes I'll paint it on there to see if it kind of disappears, and I'm really liking that. So now I'm going to go for the yellow orange. So I kind of have this handy thing going on to where I've got this yellow orange. I don't need like all of it. So what I can do here is I can add just a touch of red to this, and hopefully I can push it to that orange in between yellow orange and red orange. It's interesting, all the years that I've taught painting, printmaking, anything that involves inks, colors, stuff like that, I've noticed that people have a different sensibility about what orange is. Like, some people will say, well, the red orange looks more orange to me, whereas other people may have a harder time agreeing with that. I think I got it in there. So orange has like this dispute about it. It's kind of weird, but you should be able to tell a difference in your color wheel. That's why you want to judge it against this, as opposed to trusting your gut, because this is kind of a standard thing. It's one of the things about art. It's one of the aspects about art media that would be more convergent, where yeah, there's a right answer. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with my oranges. So now I'm going to move into my greens. So, let's see. With green, it is not going to take very much blue at all. So I want a good deal of yellow like that, and I'm just going to dip a little bit, and I'm going to mix it up. And then I'm going to check it on my color wheel and see where we're at. Again, I kind of like to try to start with the lighter colors, like yellow, green first. Looks a little dark, actually. So this is one of those rare instances where I'd probably pick up a little bit of yellow just to bring it back, because it's really close. Take a little bit more there. You can see it's relatively weak compared with the other colors as such. I'll check that out and see if that's any closer. Yeah, I'm liking that. That's a good yellow green. Okay, so that's going to be in between the yellow and the green, as such. And again, with these darker colors, if you feel like you need to go over it a few times, not a bad idea, or just lay it on really thickly. Try to keep it inside of your shape. If you want to do something besides circles, that's fine with me. A lot of times I'll have students do kind of some interesting shapes on there. So now I'm going to add a little bit more blue and I'm going to intensify it more. Looks like I'm pretty close to green already, so I'm going to see how close I am. Drop it right on there. Looks like I could use just a touch more blue, not much at all. Let's be just a little bit darker. A little bit more blue. Green's kind of a hard color to mix because of that blue-yellow ratio being kind of picky.